After selling my house to help them buy theirs, I was given a basement room with no heat. One night it dropped below freezing, and I asked for a blanket. My daughter's husband said, "You don't pay rent. Don't make demands." I slept in my coat. 3 weeks later, the power went out, and what I did next changed everything. 3 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I sold my house, the one I raised my daughter in, the one I poured 30 years of my life into, to help her and her husband buy theirs. They couldn't afford it on their own. Leah, my only child, came to me one evening with a soft, rehearsed tone and spreadsheets already printed out. Chris sat next to her on my couch, acting like this was some kind of business proposal. "Mom, we found a place. It's perfect," she said, holding my hand. "But we need help with the down payment."
"We talked about this."
"You'd live with us. We'd build something together."
Chris jumped in then.
"We could make it a multi-generational home. You wouldn't have to worry about bills or maintenance anymore." They made it sound like a dream. I was 62, tired, and just recovering from a knee surgery. The thought of not having to shovel snow or fix leaky pipes again sounded like heaven. So I did it. I signed the papers, sold my home for $212,000. After realtor fees and closing costs, I handed over nearly $180,000 to Leah and Chris. Every penny. No contract. Just trust. They closed on the house 2 weeks later. Big, new place in Henderson, Nevada. Beige stucco, with a little courtyard. For bedrooms, a finished basement, 2-car garage. I thought they'd set me up in one of the upstairs bedrooms. Instead, Chris pointed to the basement door. "We figured you'd want your own space," he said, as if he were doing me a favor. The basement had a small window, barely above ground level. No closet, no bathroom. Just a futon, a portable rack for my clothes, and a laundry machine in the corner. It was clean, sure, but freezing at night. And there was no separate thermostat. They controlled it upstairs. I swallowed my pride. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that they were stressed with the baby and the new mortgage. I cooked meals, did laundry, watched the baby when they needed. I didn't ask for anything. Not even when I overheard Chris complaining about me freeloading. Then winter hit. Nights dipped into the 30s. I tried using a space heater once, but it blew the circuit. Chris came stomping downstairs yelling about fire hazards and electric bills. After that, I slept in layers. One night it was so cold, I could see my breath. I knocked on their bedroom door, holding myself tight. "I just need another blanket," I said quietly. Chris stared at me, dead-eyed. "You don't pay rent. Don't make demands." He closed the door in my face. I went back down, wrapped myself in my coat, and sat on the floor near the laundry machine. I didn't cry. I just sat there, stunned, like I was watching someone else's life. After that, things shifted. I stopped thinking of Leah as my daughter. She watched all this. She knew I was cold, knew what Chris had said, and said nothing. I started digging. Asked about the house deed. Chris brushed it off, said it was complicated. I checked the county records. My name wasn't on the deed. Wasn't on the loan. The $180,000? They listed it as a gift in the mortgage application. I had no legal claim to anything. I felt sick.
Betrayed.
Used. 3 weeks later, a storm rolled through and knocked out the power. Chris lost his mind. The baby's bottle warmer didn't work, the heat shut off, the Wi-Fi was out. I offered to help check the breakers. "You live down there. You figure it out," he snapped. That was the last straw. The next day, while they were out, I flipped every switch on the breaker box, then locked it with a padlock I had bought from Home Depot. I pocketed the only key. Then I went to the bank. I remembered Chris had added my name to their joint savings account the year before so I could help them qualify for the loan. He never took me off. The account balance showed $43,000. I transferred $38,000 into a new account under my name. Not a penny more than I felt I deserved. Then I called a legal aid office. The woman I spoke to, Tamara, was kind. Said I had a strong case for civil fraud if I could prove I contributed under false promises. She walked me through it all. But the best part? I told my story on Facebook in a local Henderson group Leah was part of. I posted photos of the basement, the text thread where I asked for a blanket, the email where Leah promised to take care of me for the rest of my life. I didn't attack them. I just told the truth. By nightfall, the post had over 800 shares. Comments flooded in. Parents, teachers, neighbors, all saying how ashamed they were of Leah and Chris. One woman who worked at Leah's school board said she forwarded the post to her supervisor. The next morning, I left. Took my suitcase, the baby blanket Leah had used as a child, and nothing else. A friend from church picked me up. As I left, I slid a note under their front door. I lived in the dark, like you said, but not anymore. The days after I left were a strange mix of relief and tension. I stayed with my friend Marcia, who lived about 15 minutes away in an older part of town. She gave me her guest room, cooked with me, talked me through the nights when I felt like I'd made everything worse. I couldn't sleep much. My mind kept replaying every moment. Chris's smirk, Leah's silence, the cold cement floor. 2 days after my Facebook post went viral, I got a text from Leah. Why would you do this to us? You're ruining our lives.
No paleri.
No, are you okay? Just blame. I didn't respond. Then came the emails. One from Chris calling me a petty, bitter old woman. Said I'd regret dragging their names through the mud. Another from Leah, more measured, asking if I'd consider taking the post down for the baby's sake. But the thing is, they weren't just suffering online. I learned through the grapevine that Chris's boss saw the post. He worked in a mid-sized property management company in Vegas. Someone sent the link to HR. A week later, he was let go. Not because of my post directly, but because someone dug up proof that he'd lied about his employment history to get their home loan. Turns out he'd used an inflated offer letter Leah typed up for him to help with pre-approval. That bank fraud? It caught up quick. I didn't report it, but someone did. Maybe it was someone from the community. Maybe one of Chris's old coworkers. I honestly didn't care. All I know is that by week 3, Chris had a lawyer and a bigger problem than me. As for Leah, the school didn't fire her, but they did put her on leave. The board opened a review after seeing screenshots of parents commenting on the post, questioning her judgment, her home life, and whether she was safe to be around children. That sounds harsh. Maybe it was. But I remember sitting in that freezing basement, teeth chattering, and thinking, this is what she let happen to her own mother. I didn't take the post down. Instead, I gave a short interview to a small local blog run by a retired journalist.
Just told the same story. No exageración.
Just truth. He published it under the title, She Sold Her House to Help Her Daughter. What she got was a basement with no heat. It made the rounds again. This time, even more people saw it. I started getting messages from strangers. Some sharing their own horror stories, others offering support. One woman mailed me a quilt. Another offered to help me get my own apartment. I declined most of it. I didn't want charity. I wanted dignity. Then came the twist I didn't expect. The bank froze the joint savings account Chris and Leah had used, standard procedure during an ownership dispute. That $38,000 I'd moved? They tried to file a claim to get it back. I got served with paperwork claiming I had stolen it. Tamara, my legal aid attorney, wasn't surprised. She said it was predictable and told me exactly what to do. I printed every message, every email, every screenshot. I wrote a full account of the agreement they made with me, how I funded their purchase, how I was promised a permanent place in the home, how they gave me a room without heat and told me to stop making demands, how Chris laughed at me when I asked for warmth. We didn't even get to court. Their attorney, some young guy barely out of law school, called Tamara after reviewing the documents. He said they wanted to settle quietly. But I wasn't interested in quiet anymore. I thought settling out of court would bring closure. I thought they'd offer me some money, and that'd be it. But instead, their lawyer offered something else, something strange. He said Chris and Leah were willing to give up the house if I dropped the social media stuff and agreed not to pursue further action. I was stunned. Give up the house? I asked. To me? Yes, he said. They're trying to avoid further financial and reputational damage. They're underwater. They'd rather walk away than deal with litigation. I couldn't believe it at first. But then I looked into it. Turns out, after Chris lost his job, they fell behind on payments. Leah's unpaid leave didn't help. And they couldn't refinance with the bad publicity and loan fraud suspicion hanging over them. Plus, with my claim looming and the bank investigating the origin of the down payment, their position was weaker than they let on. Tamara explained it. If I took over the mortgage and proved my financial contribution, I could push for full ownership through a legal settlement. I had enough left from my savings withdrawal to handle the fees and paperwork. It would be a stretch, but possible. So I agreed. But on my terms. I met them once, at the mediation office. Leah looked pale, older. Chris didn't even look at me. He just kept his arms crossed and his jaw locked tight. I didn't gloat.
I didn't yell.
I just said, "You had a chance to do right by me. This is what happens when you treat people like they're disposable." They signed. I signed. The house was mine. They had 30 days to vacate. For the first week, they begged. Leah called crying, asking if I'd consider letting them stay in the basement while they got on their feet. Chris even offered to pay rent if I gave them 6 more months. I said no. "You don't pay rent," I told him. "So don't make demands." 3 weeks later, I watched them pack up their car and leave.
No volví.
No final word. The twist? The house had always been a weight to me. I didn't even want it anymore. It reminded me of betrayal. So I sold it, this time legally in my name. And I used that money to buy a modest condo in a quiet complex just outside Summerlin. One with sunlight, a warm bedroom, and neighbors who check on each other. But the biggest twist came months later. I ran into Leah by accident at a pharmacy. She was alone, thinner, and looked like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't recognize me at first. When she did, her eyes filled with tears. "Mom, I messed up," she whispered. I didn't say anything. "Chris left," she added. "Took the car. He blamed me for everything." I felt nothing. Just a quiet kind of peace. She had made her bed. She stood there in the pharmacy aisle, eyes red, holding a pack of baby wipes and generic Tylenol. Her hair was messy, her coat too thin for December. It had been nearly 9 months since I walked out of that basement. Seeing her like that should have brought me pain. Or pity. But all I felt was stillness. She kept whispering, like she was scared someone might overhear. "Chris left the day after the move. Took the car, some cash. He's in Arizona now. With some woman from his old job." Her lips trembled. "He blocked me on everything." I nodded. "Sounds like him." Her eyes searched mine for some softness. "I've been staying with a friend. But her landlord said I can't stay much longer. I don't know what I'm going to do." I waited. Then she said the words she never said when I was sleeping in a freezing basement. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was selfish. I let him treat you like a stray dog in your own home. I let him turn me into someone I don't even recognize." I should have hugged her. Or cried. Or done anything a mother might do. But I didn't. "You knew better," I said. "But you chose him. Every time." She looked like she might collapse. But I wasn't there to catch her. "I just need some time," she said. "Just until I get a job." I shook my head. "I gave you 30 years. I'm done giving." I turned and left her standing there. The revenge wasn't just taking the house. It wasn't the money or the Facebook post or the humiliation they brought on themselves. The real revenge was letting them fall, completely, publicly, and not lifting a finger to save them. That's what they did to me. When I was cold and scared and one blanket away from hypothermia, they looked the other way. Now it was my turn. In the months that followed, I rebuilt my life. My new condo wasn't fancy, but it was warm.
Mine.
Paid for by the sale of the very house they thought they could steal from me. I joined a local community center, made new friends, started teaching a budgeting class for women over 50 who had been financially manipulated or abandoned. Turns out, there were more of us than I expected. We helped each other get strong again. One day, I drove past their old neighborhood just to see. Their neighbors had heard the story. A few even nodded at me as I passed, like they knew what had gone down. Chris eventually got arrested on fraud charges tied to their mortgage paperwork. I don't know how that ended. I didn't care enough to follow. As for Leah, I never saw her again after that day in the pharmacy. I heard she got a job in a diner, moved to a shared apartment, and was working double shifts to pay off the debt they racked up. She never reached out again. And that was fine. Some people lose everything and learn. Others don't.
Me?
I learned that revenge doesn't always come in fire and fury. Sometimes it comes in silence. In walking away while the people who betrayed you drown in the mess they made. I found peace in the quiet, in the warmth, in knowing I survived what they tried to bury me under. And I'll never let anyone put me in the basement again. 3 months after I saw Leah in that pharmacy, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just my name, written in small, uneven letters. I opened it carefully. It was a short note, written on a torn piece of lined paper. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I'm clean. I left him for good. I'm working 2 jobs and taking care of my son on my own now. Every time I think about what we did to you, I want to crawl into a hole. I hope one day you can live without hating me. Love, Leah. I read it once. Then again. Then I put it in a drawer and never responded. It wasn't hate I felt. It was something emptier. Something colder. By then, I had already changed my will. Everything I had, condo, car, small retirement fund, was going to a local nonprofit that helped older women facing homelessness. I'd met too many of them. Women like me. Good women who trusted the wrong people and ended up sleeping in their cars or couch hopping in silence. I'd told my lawyer to leave nothing to Leah. Not out of spite, but because I wanted that door closed. For good. One afternoon, I was teaching a class on financial independence at the community center. One of the women asked what made me want to help. I used to think giving everything to your kids was love, I said. Now I think love is teaching them how to stand without stepping on anyone. That was the last time I ever spoke of Leah publicly. Years passed. I got older. My back ached more in the mornings. I needed help lifting groceries sometimes. But I never went cold again. Never begged again. Never lived under someone else's roof again. One day, I saw a little boy playing outside the center, chasing a red ball. His mother called after him. She had her hair pulled back tight and wore a faded diner uniform. I recognized her. It was Leah. She didn't see me. Or maybe she did, and looked away. I watched her pick up the boy, kiss his head, and carry him across the parking lot. No car. Just a stroller and a big canvas bag. She looked tired, but she looked present. I didn't wave, didn't call out. She was surviving, maybe even growing. But I wasn't there to witness it. That chapter of my life was over. The revenge was complete long before they left the house. But the justice, real justice, was in me finding peace while they tasted every ounce of the pain they served cold to me. It didn't come fast. It didn't come loud, but it came. And in that silence, I rebuilt myself from the ground up. No one puts me in a basement ever again.
Not now.
Not ever.